Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tone Base's channel, where today I decided to have a little chat with you guys about futures. Everyone's been asking about Bitcoin futures, and it's time I started providing you some more information from people that are experienced with futures. I am a little bit experienced myself from having traded futures. I stopped about a year or two ago just because I got busy, but I did trade futures. I traded oil futures, gold, S&P, silver futures. Didn't really get too much into the commodity side of things, but I'm with a guest who's joining me here in Mexico. Sorry, I'm Mexico. Oh my God, you're from Mexico. Joining me here in Bogota, Colombia. We met in Mexico for the first time, and goes by the name Ugly Old Goat. And for personal reasons, has not decided to be on camera yet. You will see him on camera eventually. He's joining me here in my apartment. So go ahead and say hello to my viewers, Mr. Goat, and tell us a little bit something about yourself.
Okay, well, hello, viewers, and thank you so much, Tone, for having me. Okay, and I don't know how the other viewers feel, but I think that one of the best things that you've done is you and Jimmy Song partnering up. But just you guys fit each other like a hand in glove, and personality-wise, and also with your financial and technical knowledge. So I just encourage you, both of you, keep doing what you're doing. And I first got to know Tone online, and I'm a technical trader, a successful one. But what he's mainly done for me is, to me, he's a fundamentalist, because he's taught me the fundamentals of why Bitcoin is what it is in a way that I can understand. Jimmy is way beyond me because he's in the more technical side. But Tone asked me because I do have a large background in futures trading. I'm a successful trader to talk about futures market. And so I thought the way to start it out, it would be, why do we have futures markets? And I think that's a question that you need to ask.
Right. Well, let's talk about your experience, right? So what year was the first time you made your first futures trade?
I was 22 years old, and I was weaned in the markets of 1973.
And so you were trading futures in 1973.
Right.
Wow, that's definitely before I was born. So this should be interesting. Way before computers, pretty much, right? It was literally floor trading, paper trading.
Right. Well, we had this big board that kind of sounded and looked like a pinball machine, and that's what we would trade off of. I at that time, I was able to get a job as a broker. I was able to get a job as a broker just by, hey, can I hang out here? You don't have to pay me anything but what I make in commissions. And unfortunately, they hired me on that basis, and I didn't make any money for, I don't know, the first 2 or 3 years. I had to work as a waiter at night. But I did have the experience of my father had provided me $5,000 to trade with, and I think I started trading in April, and by June I had run it up to $350,000, and I figured I'd be a millionaire by the end of the year. But instead, by September, I'd lost it all. So that was my first experience in futures.
All right, so let's jump right into it. Why do we have futures markets?
Okay. The futures markets are there for hedgers, for people that are in the business. For example, if you're in the grain business, you want to be able to either, if you're a producer, you want to be able to hedge your wheat or your soybeans. And if you're in the livestock business, you want to be able to, sell your livestock and lock in your price. Or you might be hedging on the buy side if you use a lot of wheat, let's say, and you're a bakery. So the futures market is not created for the speculator. It's created for the users that are trying to pass on risk. And the speculators assume that risk. And a lot of people consider it gambling, but it's not. Gambling is where you create a risk that does not really exist. Where speculation, there's a real risk that you're trying to pass on as a user, and the speculator picks up on that risk.
Okay, so in that case, you never really liked all of the futures that came out that had that didn't have physical delivery of the underlying commodity?
Well, I think it's okay. For example, on the S&P, I used to trade a lot in what I think it was called the value line when that was traded, I think, in Kansas City. And but I also traded the S&P and the options, and that's fine. An exchange traded futures is fine for something like that, because making delivery is just kind of a problem. But for something like gold and silver, you don't really need an ETF. I was in the gold and silver business, and I literally made and took and made delivery of hundreds of silver and gold contracts. And that's what you want in a commodities futures market. You want the underlying commodity. You want to be able to make or take delivery.
Okay, so but right now what I see happening is, especially like in the gold market, all this future trading is going on, and all of them just like cancel. All of these things cancel each other out pretty much right before the time of expiration. Because how much of the gold future trading do you think right now is speculative versus actual hedging of real gold?
Well, probably most of it is speculative, but the core underlying trading is based on the actual physical delivery. Probably one of the best examples was the hunt bubble, which I was in the middle of.
But that was silver.
Yes, that was silver. The same thing.
Idea, right.
Same idea.
I'm familiar with it.
But basically, Lamar Bunker Hunt, and the whole Hunt family did manage to corner the silver market, and they drove the price up, and they drove the price. No, it's okay. Mm-hmm. They drove the price up. I mean, it was about $5 or $6, and then went to. I remember being long at the time, and I think I sold all of mine out at $17, and it went up to $50. Well, when it went up to $50, you would be amazed at the amount of silver that out there, and people were lined up in the streets taking silver off their mantle, selling it to Engelhard, who was basically buying from all the street vendors that buy gold and silver on the street. And of course, they were the sellers, and they gave Hunt all the silver they could possibly want. And that is the use of the futures market, and that is what broke the corner, that the Hunts tried to pull off. Now there were real fundamental reasons too, which I'm sure this audience doesn't need my education on, but it was way overdone, and the market corrected itself, and they did it because silver could be delivered.
Right, and that's why their bubble failed.
Exactly.
Yes. Martin Armstrong talked about that a lot in his writings, talking about how that bubble failed because they could not corner the market because of the delivery.
Oh, really? I'm not familiar with him.
Okay, so this is going to bring us into the concept of the Bitcoin futures, because the Bitcoin futures that the CME is coming out with do not have physical delivery. So you are not a big fan of that?
No, I will never use that market because it is a pure speculative market. Me to use it because I own Bitcoin, but there will be a time when I want to hedge my Bitcoin. The only way I can do that on an exchange, a cash-based settlement, is I would have to give my Bitcoin to a bank, and then they would loan me money to sell the futures, and they would have to finance that hedge. And you can imagine how much it would cost me in interest and cost the bank if Bitcoin, I think right now, is trading at $15,000. Well, what if the next 6 weeks it goes to $150,000?
Right. So, but on the flip side, right, what do you think about everyone that's accusing the futures markets of gold manipulation of prices and perpetually, suppressing the price of gold with the futures?
I think that is a canard. It's a widely held false belief, and I think you've outlined it probably better than I ever could. But yes, it's got nothing to do. You can do maybe short-term manipulations, but there cannot be any long-term manipulation.
Yeah, that's my view pretty much as well. I've debated this topic with Andy Hoffman.
Yes, I know. That's all.
Yeah, so this is where you and I will differ a little bit, because I'm kind of happy that the futures markets on the CME do not settle in Bitcoin and is pure speculative. Now, my background in futures is a little different. My background in futures has always been speculative. So I don't even know how to like treat futures as a true hedge because I'm not a gold miner. I don't work in the oil industry. I'm not a farmer. And for me, by not having futures in Bitcoin with physical delivery of the Bitcoin, it removes the futures market from creating price discovery of the underlying asset. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think that if it's a cash settle, it's true price discovery. I do think there's an existing market that it's not pure because you can't make the physical delivery, but in a sense you can, and that's the derivative market at BitMax.
BitMax, right? We were going to talk about that. So I don't really see BitMax as a price discovery exchange.
I do.
You do. That's interesting because I see only the exchanges where Bitcoin is actually like being bought and sold, not being used as a small fraction of collateral as price discovery for the world. Like I've never seen anybody reference the BitMax price of Bitcoin in order to make, let's say, a peer-to-peer trade.
It was probably pure because it is actually based in the correct standard, and that is Bitcoin itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it so unique and so revolutionary, and that's why I have such a high regard for Arthur Hayes and what that team has done.
So you're a big fan. You're one of the biggest traders actually on BitMax, right?
Yeah, I'm
like transaction-wise.
I don't know about transaction-wise.
No, not the size of the transaction, but you're constantly trading there.
I'm constantly trading there, yes, and I'm a successful trader there. I'm in the top 10 of the notional traders.
Right, there you go. That's what I meant. All right. Oh, just a quick minor plug for BitMax. I was actually a beta user of that platform, and I met Arthur and the CEO back when they were launching it. And I do have an affiliate code in the bottom of my video, a little short plug. So those of you that are planning to, if you are going to be trading on BitMax, please go ahead and use the affiliate code. It'll probably save you a couple of bucks on commissions. They have a fairly good affiliate program for people. Okay, so, but again, I like the fact that the futures will not be doing price discovery, right? Because this way they can't move too much away from the exchanges that are being used by the CME to get the underlying price, right? Because you can speculate on the futures, but you always need like a counter because it's a zero-sum game in the futures market. And that price can't deviate too far from the underlying price discovery, which are exchanges like Bitstamp and Gemini and GDAX and whatever else they're using in their index.
Okay, the reason I'm opposed to this is because it leaves out legitimate hedgers. Okay, and I don't know.
Well, I agree with you there.
And so it's a pure speculative market, and I don't think it's going to be beneficial. I think it's going to be harmful.
But it doesn't leave out legitimate hedgers voluntarily, right? Because you can still go out and buy and hold the Bitcoin yourself in order to hedge it in the CME futures market.
No, because the Bitcoin I have, the only way that I can hold my hedge is I'm going to have to turn that Bitcoin over to a bank. And basically, that bank is going to have to finance my hedge. Let's say Bitcoin currently is at $15,000, and over the next 6 weeks, it goes to $150,000. I'm going to finance that hedge. Whereas today, if I sell Bitcoin on BitMax and I have the Bitcoin and it's there, I'm not losing the dollar value at all. Just some of my Bitcoin goes down. So it's a perfect hedge on BitMax, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. I think on an exchange traded ETF. One of the things a great saying that you came up with, Tone, that I just agree with completely. The other day you said a collateralized problem is a decentralized solution.
Right. Yeah, I said centralized problem to a decentralized solution.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's exactly for that reason that I am not for the exchange, the cash settled
futures.
Because what you're doing, a legitimate hedger, the only way he can legitimately hedge is he's going to have to collateralize a loan, which is a blank check from a bank, unlimited blank check, and he's going to have to collateralize it with his Bitcoin. And he can stand to lose his Bitcoin and the loan. And I've seen it happen. I actually have seen it happen in the cattle futures market.
All right. So in that case, yeah, I've given some stories on a prior podcast. There was like some stories. Did you ever read the book Options, Futures, and Other Derivatives?
I don't think so.
It's the book by Hall, the guys that invented options markets. But anyway, there's a cool story about the cattle futures in there. But so in that case, what do you think about S&P 500 futures?
Well, I think that's different because it's not you can't easily come up with that. How many? There's 500 different stocks.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, you could put together a package, but I don't think it's necessary. But with Bitcoin, it's a real commodity. It's not a security. And it's very easy to come up, even with all of these forks, it was easy to come up with a deliverable contract because you were only trading the Bitcoin at delivery time, not all the forks.
Right, that is true. That is true. Yeah, because this is why, like, to me, the Bitcoin futures contract is more like the S&P 500 futures contract, which is always cash settled because no one can actually hold the S&P 500. You can hold the ETF, right? But not the S&P 500 itself. And to me, the way I look at it is the price of the S&P 500 future can't really deviate too much from the underlying because the underlying is price discovery. And you can't really manipulate 500 stocks at the same time for your future to make money. Now, we will see in Bitcoin whether it's possible to manipulate the underlying price by having a large position in the futures contract for cash settlement.
Let's look at this a different way, Tone. Okay? Let's suppose that this was not a cash settled contract, and instead it was deliverable in Bitcoin. Now, please think of that. What would be happening? What you've just done is right now, I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. I have a hard time because I've had 5 bank accounts shut down. I have exchanges that kick me off. I have a hard time getting Bitcoin. I get it because I'm a successful trader. But imagine if I could go on to the CME, buy all the Bitcoin I want, and I take delivery. Well, guess what? The CFTC wouldn't approve of that because you've just opened up the biggest gateway in the world. And the $1 million Bitcoin would probably happen within 3 months instead of what we're saying 3 years. I don't think we're ready for that because that's what would happen. I guarantee you, if they opened up that gateway, there'd be the Bitcoin would become a standard very, very quickly, and we're not ready for that.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, by flipping that argument around, by taking delivery. Okay, so I will put the links to a lot of the stuff in the video description. Like, I don't have the specs in there yet. So what did you think about the Interactive Brokers CEO? Interactive Brokers is a clearinghouse for the CME, which is what makes him very, very nervous. And what makes him nervous is the cap that the price can only move 20% in one day. He's worried that if you're long, it's not a problem, but it's bad for the short. So he's not even going to allow people on his exchange, like myself, and I use Interactive Brokers. I like that exchange. I like that broker, not an exchange. He's not going to allow his customers to short Bitcoin through the CME, but only go long.
I agree with it completely. And if they made it a deliverable contract, then there's no problem going short. Because I have the actual Bitcoin and I'm delivering it. Okay, but even then you're giving up control of your Bitcoin. And the nice thing about Bitcoin is you're not giving up the control, except maybe for a portion of the Bitcoin that you have on that exchange. You still have the exchange risk, which is, there's no way around that one. But you're gonna, the CME, it could very well be setting itself up for a disaster.
Yeah.
And that is a big problem because Bitcoin trades 24 hours. How are you going to have a market that's open 5 days a week? And I just don't see it as a useful vehicle for legitimate players. It's a pure speculative vehicle, which I think it will not reflect the real market as much as I just don't think it. I think there's some inherent dangers in the way it's set up. Now, if they made that so it was a deliverable contract, that would be different. But I don't think the CFTC or the government would allow it because we would be moving to Bitcoin so quickly then. You've opened up a gateway that's now closed. People have a hard enough time buying Bitcoin at Coinbase and other places. Now, imagine if all of a sudden you can buy all the Bitcoin you want on an exchange and take delivery in 3 months.
Well, they wouldn't even be able to do delivery. Like, it would be hard to source that Bitcoin. Bitcoin is hard to get a hold of.
Exactly. That's why you need to make it a deliverable contract.
Okay, so yeah, we're approaching new all-time highs again. Excuse me. We're approaching new all-time highs again. So this is crazy. Let's take a minor break from talking about futures, which we'll get back to. How high do you think this bubble will go? And is it even a bubble?
Okay. People that know me know that that's a silly question. The only thing that I know as a successful trader is I don't know. Okay?
Excellent. There you go. You heard it from Mr. Goat, who's been in it for a long time, long before I was born.
Although I will give a big tip. Okay, what I've been looking for, and this will not be the top, but it will be close to a major top, in my opinion. And that is if we go up 60% in 1 week and we hold 60%, we're very, very close to the top. I have a problem is that I always sell too early. Okay, I'm always selling on the way up, and when that thing comes down, hopefully I'll be completely out of the market. But it's also just a generous way. You save a little bit for the next guy.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about like trading. You've been pretty well at timing the tops and the bottoms over the last 12 to 18 months. All right, so let's get back into the futures a little bit more. Again, this is why I was always comparing it to the S&P 500. But what do you think about, like, do you fear any kind of manipulation now that it's out in the futures market?
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem is it's a pure speculative market. So yes, you have to have that delivery to make it a fair market. You just the government would not allow. I'm sure that they didn't put a deliverable contract in there for a reason. Because just think about it a minute, Tone. If that was a deliverable contract, everybody would be buying and taking delivery.
No, you know what? I think the main reason why they haven't put delivery yet is because I don't think people starting to understand Bitcoin traditional like finance, but taking delivery of Bitcoin is very difficult. It's difficult. There's a lot of security involved. Who's going to be the custodian? Who's going to be the middleman? I don't think the CME is like ready. I think it's much easier to deliver like cows and pigs and barrels of oil than it is to deliver Bitcoin.
It'd be very, very easy because if you look at how the delivery is made, it's really not the CME or the COMEX. So let's take gold and silver, which I'm most familiar with. COMEX doesn't make or take delivery. They have exchange approved depositories, and you can have there's I don't know 5 or 10 of them, and they're located all over the country. Same thing with cattle futures. You can deliver the cattle at different locations.
Right, but it's a little difficult to steal cattle in the middle of this transaction, right? It's a lot easier for something to go wrong in Bitcoin delivery, and now who's responsible?
That's why you would have multiple reserves. The same thing with gold. Gold can be stolen. It's just that I'm not like Jimmy Song and a developer how to secure that kind of a depository, but there would be no obstacle in having several different companies that's all they do. All they have is the depository between the major players, and really it's the same thing. what you do is like exchange. It's having you know, a clearinghouse for banks. It's not a whole lot different.
All right, so let's dig into the futures a little bit. So all of a sudden, the CBOE comes out with their own cash settled contract, which is slightly different based on the spec. The leverage is going to be much smaller. The CBOE contract is only 1 Bitcoin per contract. The CME one is 5 Bitcoins per contract. Have you had a chance to look at either spec yet, or you haven't really?
I looked at
paid attention?
I paid enough attention to the CME specs to realize that, you know, this was not a good idea.
Okay, so I think one of my biggest problems with it is the fact that, I mean, it's going to be closed over the weekend.
Oh yeah, that's a big problem. That's in addition to the other reasons. Yeah, and it's not going to be open 24 hours, and a lot of times Bitcoin is doing its thing at night. In fact, all the traditional traders are trading all day on the traditional markets, and at night they come home and trade Bitcoin.
Well, the CME contract does trade at night, right? Like they do trade at night. Like even like the oil and the gold futures, they trade at liquidity generally dries up at night. It'll be interesting to see if liquidity dries up at night in the CME Bitcoin contracts, because most traders of the other contracts are US based. The majority of traders are US based, and they go to sleep. I wouldn't say the majority of traders are US based. However, the majority of traders that are going to be able to trade the CME futures, like I will be able to trade the CME futures on day one. I don't believe that most, I would say that like 60 to 80% of all Bitcoiners will not have the ability to trade CME futures on day one because they don't have any traditional exchanges. I've had an account with Interactive Brokers for years, right? So I can start trading this thing on day one. It's unfortunate that I can't trade in my retirement account. I've mostly moved all of my trading into my retirement account. You can't trade futures in your retirement account. So I may, you know, open up my regular account back up. But my broker is not going to let me go short, so that not that would be a good idea, but I like that option. So it's going to be real interesting. And do you think that the price of Bitcoin right now is going up in preparation for these futures, and then it's a, you know, buy the rumor, sell the news event?
It might be. I mean, like I say, to me, the key is, I'll just tell you out flat, if the market closes at 18,000 this week and holds it, I'm looking for a top. Now, not saying it won't go to 30,000, but it's close enough for me. I know enough. I don't want in that market anymore. Okay, I've been nothing but playing on. In fact, people laugh. I used to be on the chat a lot, and I just completely got off because people say, "Well, you just always long." Yeah, you're right. I've just always been buying Bitcoin, but I also know I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. I also have been through the down market, and I made money on the down market. So when Bitcoin, hopefully, when it gets what I think is overextended, I'm not going to be net short Bitcoin, but I might want to hedge some of what I have. And if I do that, I'm not going to do it on the CME because I'm going to have dollars to do it. And the only way I can get dollars is I have to give Bitcoin to a bank for my collateral. I have no interest in that. But I have no problem sending some Bitcoin to BitMEX, selling it there. Hey, if I'm wrong, I haven't lost any dollars. I've just lost a little bit of my Bitcoin. And I can't get sold out because the Bitcoin's there.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. Now, BitMEX allows you to go up to 100x leverage, I believe, correct? I haven't traded there in a while.
Yeah,
Back when I used to trade there, they used to go a maximum of like 4x leverage. And I remember talking to Arthur back in the day when I was like, hey, you do realize other exchanges have like 20x leverage? And he's like, no, that's just insane. We're gonna be more responsible. And this is funny how now they're at 100%. So what is the average leverage that you like to use on the exchange?
What I do, what I can't even remember what they call it. It's all the way on the left. Are you on? Do you have?
I'm on it, but I'm not logged in, so I can't really play around much.
But anyway, I set it so I'm setting my own based on my balance. I don't go 3x, or I forgot what they call it on that exchange.
Oh, okay, I see.
And that's the way I do it. However, I'll give you for people that trade on BitMEX, I have learned something this year that's very, very valuable, and that is in order not to get wrecked or to get wrecked properly, okay, what you want to do is you might want to move up to the 100x margin because that's better than a stop. There's no slippage on your 100x margin. And sometimes you kind of have to manipulate your position and buy and sell a bit so to move your stop up, because it's always going to be set on your base price. But I have learned that that's a useful tool, particularly, you know, if you need 8 hours of sleep a night. Now, I'm blessed because I only sleep about 3 or 4 hours a day, and so I have no problems with a 24-hour market. But that is a problem for a lot of people, and Bitcoin is it's unforgiving, and you need to, you know, you want to, you just have to be flexible, and you know, like I'm blessed as I'm never more than 3 hours away from the market.
Oh, very good, very good. All right, so anything else to add? I think this was good for our viewers. Maybe we can go back to the, I mean, we did go through the history of and why we have a futures market, even though it is mostly speculative these days. But what do you see as like a general future of finance? Do you think we're going in the right direction in the financial markets? You've been in them for 40 years.
Well, I'm very, very hopeful of what's going on. I am a big follower of one of my mentors is somebody that nobody knows or reads about anymore, but it's E.C. Harwood. And I do believe that and F.A. Hayek. And I do believe that the key to our future is free market money, but that has to come with also free market banking. They have to go hand in hand. And I think that we're not there yet, but it's coming. I do think that there will be just a matter of very short time before there will be no fees at all for Bitcoin. But that's going to be settled in a way that very few people realize yet. And I think I think it's going to be resolved through some type of system of seigniorage. It will be done by the Bitcoin community itself, and it will be done in a manner similar to an ICO, but it will not be an ICO. It will be simply people that have Bitcoin that want to perform the service.
All right, so let's see if we have any questions from our viewers. We're just under 1,000 live viewers. So let's see if there's any questions. So we'll go ahead and type those in. And Mr. Goat will be happy to answer them for you.
Oh, Tone, are we friends or not friends?
I believe so. I've known you for a while.
Well, the people, formally I'm Mr. Goat, but my friends call me by my first name.
Okay. I'll try and make that work.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we have a question. Let me see. I think I can alt and I can pause this thing. All right. Do you think Bitcoin will correct this year? I think we already answered that. It's a little early to say.
Yeah, I mean, Tone is teaching you the correct move, that he's saying the top is going to be a spike, and it'll be very fortunate if you catch it. I don't try and catch it. If I catch it, it's due to luck. But my successful trading is not due to luck.
Do you think that the CME futures will bring down the price of Bitcoin?
I think it's going to just create volatility and havoc. I don't think it's beneficial.
Mm-hmm. I see. All right, let's see if we got any other questions.
I think it can be beneficial, but it's the way it's set up, it's not.
Someone says, Goat, did you get wrecked at 1800 as we all thought? Maybe it's someone that knows you from the chat groups.
Oh, they might be. I've been wrecked a couple times this year, yes, but I don't know what the price was. I don't know.
So somebody wants to sum it up, and it's good. In a nutshell, are the futures good for Bitcoin or not good? And and it looks like they would be good if they were physically delivered.
Yeah, so that would be such a fantastic improvement, because then legitimate hedgers can use it. And again, I go back to the underlying fundamental question: why do we have a futures contract? We don't have it there for the speculator. We have it there for the hedger, so he can pass on risk. If I'm a hedger, I want to give my risk to the speculator. Speculator performs a useful function. He assumes risk. But all you have in this futures market is risk with no underlying commodity that's deliverable. And that's the problem.
All right, I have another question. I'm assuming this person joined us a little bit late. I guess I'll try to answer it. You can correct me. It says, some people say that the futures will do to BTC what they are doing to gold and silver in the long term. Any thoughts? Well, to sum that up, we briefly discussed it. So just like me, Ugly doesn't believe in long-term gold manipulation due to the fact that it's a futures contract with physical delivery. Therefore, the markets are going to be totally different. I don't believe that gold and silver are long-term manipulated by the futures contract. But in this case, you just see just more volatility, like nothing malicious, nothing long-term government malicious. Just
no, I don't see anything.
volatility.
I don't see anything malicious in it. The only thing that possibly malicious is that because it's a speculative vehicle, we might go higher than we would have otherwise and lower than we would otherwise, and then we need more regulation is always a solution. And why not do this right and create a futures market that hedgers can use? Which I'm not even sure I'm in favor of that, because if they opened up all the corridors? The problem is the KYC and AML laws. If we could buy Bitcoin easily, then we wouldn't need to have a futures to take delivery. But if we had a deliverable futures contract, it would be who knows where the price of Bitcoin would go, because it would be the only open avenue to buy Bitcoin easily. I guess you told me that CBO is one Bitcoin
per contract.
Per contract. So people, all they have to do is have a Bitcoin account, and they get a buy it on the futures and take delivery, and they have it, which is a whole lot easier than opening up a Coinbase account or any other account nowadays.
All right, so we got another question, and then this one's actually interesting. So other countries might also open the futures contracts. So what do you think the effects of jurisdictions would be from different, let's say Japan starts opening futures contracts with their futures exchanges, and other countries? Do you think the US will still be the leader like it is right now for all commodities?
I really don't know. That's a hard one to answer.
It's an interesting question.
But I think that the first exchange that makes it a deliverable contract would get all the business. Because, if you can trade on the futures and take delivery of all the Bitcoin you want, well, that's an incredible thing. And something that's not available now. And then, so again, I just think I'm back to the traditional, why we have a futures market. The futures market is for hedgers. It's what's being created is really not useful for hedgers, because a hedger is actually not eliminating risk. He's actually taking on more risk, because he has to take that Bitcoin to a bank, and then he has to collateralize that Bitcoin with dollars in order to put on the hedge. He can wind up getting screwed by the bank and also losing his Bitcoin.
All right, so we have another question, a little off topic, but I would like to hear it as well. How do you feel about Ethereum and ETH?
I was early on excited about Ethereum, and I did quite well in it. And then I started listening to Tone Vaye.
Oh man, I'm sorry for your loss. You could have been a very rich man.
And I thank him for that. And I'm looking into starting a Bitcoin Supermax conference.
Okay, so here's the question for misunderstanding. Someone asked, what happens if the CME Bitcoins are stolen? Well, they can't be stolen because the CME isn't going to be holding any Bitcoin because it's all cash settled, so there's no need to be. Here's another interesting question. Where do you buy your Bitcoin if it's not on Coinbase? So I'm assuming you don't use Coinbase. You do?
I don't buy it anymore.
Right, you earn it by being a good trader at BitMax.
Exactly.
There you go. See, so trading could be profitable. Yeah, so let me see if there's any other interesting questions here. Oh, this is what I was going to ask you earlier. So as the CME and CBOE open up Bitcoin for trading, as more and more financial institutions trying to get ETFs on Bitcoin, at the same time, we have the Senate bill that is trying to make it, a criminal act to, store your own Bitcoin. What do you think about the situation?
Well, I think that I might be renouncing my citizenship one day if we keep going that direction. So I think it's a very, very serious move. And
well, you already don't live in the U.S., so you're
I already don't
there.
live. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Right, and interesting. Yeah, the tax thing is also going to be an issue. What about Litecoin? What do you think of Litecoin?
I don't really. I own just a little tiny bit of it, and I just did it recently just because I've traded a little bit of Litecoin. Actually, I'll take that back. I have traded Litecoin. I've traded. I have very, very few alts. I would say, 1 or 2% of my portfolios in alts, and I have a little Monero, a little Lite, and a little Counterparty, and that's it.
All right. I think we're good. I think I just went through some of the better questions. No, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your views on the situation, being an experienced futures trader starting in the 70s. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, not really. It's just that I think those that are listening to Tone, you're on the right place. I just think the World Crypto Network is probably the best place for beginners and even those that are beyond the beginning stage now. It's where we keep focused and updated, because these guys are all very honest guys, and they're not in it primarily for the money. Just as I'm not in Bitcoin. I happen to be a successful trader. It is my livelihood now, but I'm working on a lot of other projects besides Bitcoin.
Oh, and I just remember what happened in Mexico. We never got the videos when you tried to publicly bet Roger Ver $10,000 that SegWit would be immediately approved if he would support SegWit, right?
Yes.
I believe that was the bet.
Well, yeah, and I kind of learned about Roger Ver then, because I thought that he at that time he was always acting, oh, I support SegWit, but he really didn't. He was kind of speaking, a double speak. He kind of indicated, well, I'm not against it, but I'm not for it, when he really was just, I was able to identify him as he just was against SegWit all the way through from top to bottom. And of course a lot's come out since then where he's just not credible anymore at all. But I was able to learn that, last year.
Have you sold all your Bcash yet?
Oh yes, I did. One of the very much too low. I didn't wait for the pump.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Me neither. I mean, I sold mine. I took my 10%, and then it popped, and now we're back lower than that already. So I'm happy.
But I did take a small percent of my Bitcoin and put it on Bitfinex, and they have that little thing where you could trade your Bitfinex for 2x. So
2x token.
Yeah, so I actually made about 20% on my Bitcoin that I had with them.
Oh, okay. So you put your Bitcoin in Bitfinex in order to sell the 2x coins prematurely.
Right.
So
right. And I could have made a bundle if I had taken all my Bitcoin and put it on Bitfinex, but I've already been clipped by them for 30% once, and I wasn't going to do that again.
You were there during a hack.
Yes, I was.
And you're not trading there anymore.
No, I trade there, and I got most of my. They made good on their promise. So as far as I'm concerned, so I'm not against. I really hope they get through this Tether thing. I think they're a good exchange. but they scare me to death sometimes, particularly when there's delays getting my Bitcoin back.
Yeah. Or you just got your Bitcoin back. There was
Yeah,
a little delay.
a little
but you got it
delay,
back,
but
yeah.
I was but I got it. And so, but I hope they get through this tether thing, because I really do think that they're good market.
All right. Well, Mr. Goat. Oh, sorry, Ugly. Thank you very much for stopping by. Maybe the next time we are in Latin America together, you will be able. You would want to show that ugly face on camera.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm hoping to have. Hopefully, this next year I'll have a coming out party. But when I do, you'll know good reasons why I can't show my face.
All right. Well, if you guys are still watching, still with us this far, if you are looking to perhaps get in touch with the Ugly Old Goat, he is available on Twitter. Not an active Twitter user. Maybe when he gets a lot of messages and a lot of pings and a lot of followers. But I will have his Twitter handle. It's Ugly Old Goat 1 on Twitter. So that's pretty much the only way people can really reach you, right?
Yeah, I'm not very good at Twitter, though. I need to probably start learning, so this might be a good way to start out.
All right, excellent. All right, I am, of course, your host, Tone Vase. Please check out the video description. You can support by using the affiliate codes. And I'll see you all in the next one. I'll probably do another market analysis coming up soon. And I will be going to Toronto tonight. There is a conference in Toronto tomorrow. Thank you, Sunny Ray, for organizing that. And then I have my trading seminar the following day, and then I'll probably be back in Colombia. I still haven't really had much time to enjoy Colombia yet.
But, it's been great here. My wife and I really enjoyed it.
All right, thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and see you all on the next one.